I'd like to introduce to you Jane Rattray. Jane is has been a homeschool mom. She's obviously a wife and a mother. And I believe you have 4 children? Is that right?
4 children, yes.
Yep. How many grandchildren do you have?
3.
Okay. And she lives in, is it Sterling?
Leominster, Sterling area. We're
Leominster
actually
area, right. She is in our speakers directory. So if you need someone especially to speak to your women, you can access that on our website. So I'm just going to turn it over to Jane and let her give us some good tips on homeschooling with joy.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here this morning to spend this time together, gaining some insight on how to find joy on a journey that has a lot of highs and lows as we homeschool our children. I'm going to share a few bits of my journey along the way. We did homeschool our children for 20 plus years, and then I also was involved doing some homeschooling through classical conversations, if anyone's familiar with that.
Sure.
But at first I wanted to start with an overview of the verse Nehemiah 8:10, which is, "Do not be grieved, for the joy of the Lord is your strength." And that just seemed to be the verse that stuck out to me as I started thinking about this topic. And so Nehemiah may be familiar to you, or it might not be, but I just wanted to kind of do a quick overview. Nehemiah was a cupbearer to the king around, I believe it's like around 444 BC, but during the time that the Israelites were in captivity in Babylonia, they had been taken captive by King Nebuchadnezzar, and many of them had returned to Jerusalem, but Nehemiah was one of the ones who had stayed, and he was serving the king. A cupbearer was someone who tasted the wine first, and if he didn't keel over, then the king knew it was good to drink, which was a pretty responsible position, and also meant that he would be a counselor to the king at times. And there was a period of time one day when some of the people that Nehemiah knew who had gone back to Jerusalem came to him, and when he simply asked, "How are things going in Jerusalem?" their response was not good. They told him of the destruction. The walls were in rubble, the gates had been burned, and Nehemiah was heartbroken. So he took a few days, he fasted, he prayed, he mourned, and then he decided that it was his job to go and do some repair. And that wasn't his career, that wasn't his wheelhouse, which is one of the reasons I thought maybe we could relate to this a little bit, because some of us have chosen to homeschool, some of us might be homeschooling remotely and have had this forced upon us, and it was not something we chose to do. But Nehemiah felt that God was calling him to go spearhead and lead this repair work. So after many days of prayer, he went before the king. And I love that there were 2 separate kinds of prayers that the Bible talks about here. And I think that that's something that we can really kind of focus on. Nehemiah spent a concentrated time of prayer before he went to the king. But as he's in the king's presence, the Bible tells us that he shot up another prayer. And I love the fact, and we're going to talk about, there are those times of reflection that are important to prayer. And there are also those in the moment when you just got to say, "Lord, don't let me blow it with this child right now," and just shoot that prayer up there that says, help me think what to say, help me know how not to lose it, help me know how to navigate in this moment. And Nehemiah shows us that both of those are important prayers. So he gets help from the king and he heads to Jerusalem. He gets materials, and he also gets letters of permission that grant him safe travel. He goes to Jerusalem. And we see that he takes this midnight ride around the walls just to see how bad things really are. So he assesses the situation. And it is indeed as bad as his friends had told him. And there are places he can't even get through because of the rubble. So I wanted, at this point when we're assessing the situation, I wanted to just talk about how important it is to reflect. January is a time when lots of people are talking about reflecting on the past year. Many of us are saying, I don't want to reflect on the past year. I just want the past year to be past. But when we take some time to think about just what's working and what isn't, then it can really help us have a clear path forward with a little bit more intention and purpose. I really recommend that you take some time to just get alone and reflect on some of the questions that I'm going to share with you in a minute. And I realize that even as I say those words, they're pretty laughable for a mom who's trying to homeschool her children. And if you're trying to homeschool remotely and do a job, to tell you to get alone and reflect on questions is a little bit funny. But I still want to encourage you to do it, and do it in whatever way works. One of the things I'm going to tell you a couple of different times today is to think small. So if your reflection time looks like half an hour while your kids are watching a TV show, then that's it. Grab a journal, a pen, go somewhere and just sit and maybe take one of these questions that I'm going to suggest and journal about that. Maybe it means you do get someone to take care of your children for half a day and you go lock yourself in your bedroom and just do some reflection and prayer and journaling. Or maybe you go to Starbucks, get a coffee and sit in your car for half an hour. Anything works, but whatever is just going to work to give you some time to think. So some of the questions that you can ask are, what is working? What has really helped you to get through, maybe if you started in March to get to this point, or what's helped you from the new year on? And again, I want to just remind you, nothing is too small to list here. If what's working is the fact that your coffee maker has your coffee ready when you come downstairs in the morning, then write it, because that's important. If what's working is that, your children can do school in pajamas and you don't have to figure out what they're going to wear, then write it down. But what is working that you can carry forward into the next semester and the rest of the year? And then what isn't working? Those are the things that we're going to ask ourselves in a few minutes. How much of that can I control? How much of that can I change? And those are the things that you're just going to put in prayer before the Lord and say, this isn't working. What can we do differently? Can you control your schedule? Is your schedule working? Do you need to make some changes in that? I just saw what you posted, Harriet, and I applaud you for it. You are amazing to get up at 4 a.m. to do your devotions. That is awesome. So, check your schedules. Another thing to think about is, are there some routines that you can put in place so that you don't have to be making decisions over and over and over again? There's a book that came out last year that I've really enjoyed. It's full of really practical ideas called The Lazy Genius Way. The author is Kendra Adachi. I can maybe put that in the chat in a few minutes. But she has lots of practical ideas in there of just things that you can do to make your life a little easier. And she talks about something as simple as having a meal matrix, knowing that on Tuesdays we'll do tacos, on Wednesdays we'll do pasta, on Fridays we'll do pizza night. Something that's in place so you're not totally reinventing dinner every week. Are there routines like you can know every morning we're going to start our school with a devotional time and then math drills, or every Thursday we're going to do art? But just what are some routines that keep you from having to make quite so many decisions and put some structure into your day and help your children know what to expect and what's coming next? Because this has been a pretty unsettling time for our children too, in so many ways. And I think as much structure and certainty as we can put into their lives gives them a sense of security. Curriculum choices, that can be a good thing to ask, what is working or what isn't. And as someone who homeschooled for over 20 years, I give you full permission and I encourage you to be willing to throw curriculum away if it isn't working. Literally throw it away or pass it on to somebody else. But if you've got a workbook that's got 10 pages done, and every one of those 10 pages was done with tears and angst and fights, And maybe that's just not working and it's time to try something new. And it's okay to do that in January or March or a week before you end school for the summer. You know, make sure your curriculum is serving you. And the same thing, maybe you've been using a textbook for science and finding that that's not working. Well, maybe this is a time to try more hands-on activities. And I've got some ideas for that later on too. If you are doing remote learning, I want to encourage you to communicate with your teachers, to give them feedback. My daughter-in-law, this is her first year of teaching and she's doing it via Zoom and remote learning. And it has been a challenge. She's giving her heart to these students. And she's the one who said to me, I want the parents to tell me what's going on. I want feedback from them. So partner with these remote learning teachers and just tell them, if your child needs to get up and walk around for a couple minutes in the middle of class, then let the teacher know. They're not being disrespectful, they're still present, but they've just got to move a little bit. And it's my hope that most teachers will work with you on those things. This is an important question, but again, an almost ironic one at this point. Where are you finding connection and community? Right now, that's a struggle, but do you have some friends that you are in a pod with, our new word, a pod of friends, but are there people that are following similar protocols as you during these COVID times? And if you're watching this after COVID, that's going to be a great history project for you to learn about. During these times that you can get together with these friends and just connect, have playtime, maybe do some school activities together. Are you able to go to church in person? If not, can you meet outdoors somewhere? Can you meet at a playground and just socially distance wearing masks? Get some time with friends. And if that's not an option, if there's just no way to be in person, can you find connection through avenues as we're doing today, through Zoom? You could do a book club with some friends through Zoom. You each read the same book and then you get on there and you talk about it. You could do a science club via Zoom. Maybe 4 moms get together, and 4 families, doesn't have to be mom, maybe dad will do this one. Or even an older sibling could do this. But you find a science experiment that basically uses household items. We used a curriculum put out by Apologia when we did high school, and all of the science experiments there for high school chemistry, biology, used basic household things that you have around your home. There are lots of experiments like that online. So say I was the mom that was responsible for a science club this week. I could gather the ingredients I have, and if there are things that are needed that we might not have in the home, I could put all those together in a bag, go drop them on the doorstep of the other families, and on Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock, we all do that experiment together. And then the next week, one of the other moms does it, and I have a break. I think that that could be a good, fun way for kids to have some connection and not feel like they're totally lonely and isolated at school. If you've got maybe younger kids who could do some kind of a craft together with a friend online, or with an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent. I heard about some people doing gingerbread houses with grandparents over the holidays. Well, Valentine's Day is coming up. Maybe you can do some Valentine's Day cookies. But, how can you find connection with others so that you're not feeling quite so lonely? And what can you celebrate? We're going to talk about the context of finding joy in the Lord was a time of celebration. And again, I really encourage you to celebrate the little things. The fact that your child stuck with that math paper that was so hard, just celebrate that. I really encourage people to know their child's love language. I think that that's an important thing. So if words of affirmation are that child's love language, just celebrate by saying, you did a great job. That was an excellent example of perseverance. I'm so proud of you. If it's gifts, I used to have a treasure box full of little knickknacks, McDonald's Happy Meal toys, just simple little dollar store things. And when the kids did something that we wanted to celebrate, they could go pick a toy out of the treasure box. For me personally, putting a sticker on the calendar if I've exercised that day is a huge motivator. It's, it can get me out the door some days. So maybe something as simple as a sticker chart. But how can you celebrate? You know, and I encourage you moms to celebrate. If once, just once today, when you wanted to yell, you didn't. You stepped back. Maybe you went to the bathroom and cried. Maybe you found a calmer way to deal with that situation. Maybe God gave you a really creative idea in that moment. Maybe 3 other times you lost it and you did yell. But if that one time you didn't, celebrate it. However, if that means you get yourself an extra cup of coffee, do it. But celebrate the wins. And then preparation time. Are you getting the preparation time you need? Do you have the resources you need? Is there something, do you need to ask for some help? Do you need to just say, I need some time alone to be able to prepare a little bit better? And again, is there someone in your life who could support you in that way and give you that help? Do you need to just maybe call another homeschool friend and say, this isn't, I've been trying to plan and it isn't working. How do you plan? Do you have any ideas for me? Connect with someone else. And, even something as simple as buying a new planner might be the solution. January is definitely the time of planners. After you have done your reflection time and you kind of really feel like you've got a sense of where you're at, I would suggest that you go to your family and just have, a short reflection time. It doesn't have to take hours, but ask some simple questions, especially ask your children. What's working for them? What helped them focus and really succeed in school this past semester? And what didn't? What was distracting them? What was causing them anxiety? And again, I just encourage you, if they're remote learning, have that conversation with the teacher and tell them what they tell you, what your child told you, and see if there's a way you can solve that together to make their learning environment more conducive to them succeeding. Well, it's interesting that after he did this assessment, Nehemiah, when he was going around the walls, nobody knew he was there. But after he had done the assessment, he went back to the leaders and the people and he said, okay, God has put his hand of favor on this work that we're going to do. The king has given us material support, and this is the plan. And I love what the people said. They said, let's do it. Let's arise and build, and they put their hands to the good work. So after you've reflected on how you want to move forward, then you can renew your vision, your why. The purpose in doing that is to develop a motive, a mission, just basically that why that's going to drive you and provide a foundation to keep you standing up when the days get hard, because they do. Homeschooling is a journey that has lots of joy, and it also has some hard days. So you take those questions that you've just reflected on, you take those answers, and if you can, just put together a simple statement that just says why you're doing this. And then write it down. Put it somewhere where you can look at it on a regular basis. Maybe you post it on the fridge. Maybe you put it in your phone. Maybe it's on your bathroom mirror. But just somewhere that you can reference back to when you kind of forget how you got yourself in this mess in the first place. I wanted to share just a little bit of the story of why my husband and I chose to homeschool. And I noticed as I was writing this up, I kept going between I and we. It totally was a joint effort, but I carried the lion's share of the work on the day-to-day basis. We kind of homeschooled in 2 different sections. So as Linda mentioned, I have 4 children. Our older 2 daughters are 21 months apart. 4 years later, we had another daughter. And then 9 years later, we had a son. So when we homeschooled the girls starting in 1989, our oldest was in 1st grade, we had a kindergartner, and we had a 13-month-old. And at that time, I think we would have told you that our why was a conviction to pass on our values, our faith, and to inspire our children to have a lifelong love of learning. This is interesting. I've been back and forth on all week whether I was going to include this story, and now I'm kind of feeling like I am, that I should. So our daughter went to kindergarten in the public school system. We were at Hanscom Air Force Base at the time. And she had a teacher that we just loved. She was such a sweetheart. And one day, Jessica came home and said, my teacher told me that dinosaurs lived on the earth before man. Who's lying to me? Because at that point in time, we would have defined ourselves as young earth creationists. Total side note, my husband still would. I have more questions, but that's a whole other conversation. But we had always taught her that, God created everything at once, all the animals, all the people. And when she said, who's lying to me, it wrenched our hearts, because she had a teacher who would never lie to her, and we wouldn't lie to her. But in a child's mind, that was the only way she could reconcile that people were telling her two different things. And that was when we thought, okay, let's do this. Let us be the ones responsible for her education until she gets to that point where she can reason these things together for herself with that value and faith system we've shared with her. So that's what we did. And Jeff and I, being trained as educators, jumped into this following a basic school structure. We tried to set up school at home because it's all we knew. And that led me to feel a lot of times like I just wasn't good enough, wasn't measuring up. President Roosevelt is known for the quote, "Comparison is the thief of joy." And that is truly, in the early days of our homeschool journey, how I felt. I was either looking to the public school system, trying to meet their standards, or I was looking to other homeschoolers trying to meet their standards. And I was just never measuring up on either front. And it didn't seem joyful. It seemed very stressful sometimes. It was when I was able to step back and readjust and look at that from a different perspective and see that we had more family time. I think our children built close relationships because we homeschooled. My husband traveled a lot, and we were able to travel with him. If he took an afternoon off, we could do an impromptu family field trip, and we have great memories of that. And both my husband and I, just love the fact that we were the ones that taught our children to read. We were the ones that, wrestled through those hard math concepts with them and helped them get it. We were there for those aha moments, and those really were joyful moments. When I got pregnant with my son, our daughters were going into 9th grade, 8th grade, and 4th grade. And at that point, we chose to put them in the public school system. And that was a good decision for us at the time. They made some good friends that are still parts of our family. So I will never be the person to tell you homeschool is the only option. There are many educational options, and we have a God who uses all of them for his glory and to help our children succeed and be who he wants them to be. So they went into public school. The one thing that I do look back on and think that I would have done differently if I'd had a little bit firmer grasp of my why at that point, if I had thought a little bit more deeply about that desire to pass on faith and a sense of, a firm foundation in our family, I would have kept our youngest daughter home a few more years. And I don't say that out of regret or shame, just kind of as a reminder that having that clear sense of purpose can really help you making the decisions that are best for your children. But they did okay. They did great, and my children are doing well today, and I'm so grateful for what the Lord has done in our family's life. So we went on to Homeschool 2.0, started our son in kindergarten, and ended up homeschooling him all the way through 2015, where he graduated from high school. Then he went on to UMass Lowell, and Harriet, he graduated from UMass Lowell with a degree in computer engineering. That's about all I can tell you on that, because all I know is that he's also my tech support. The other day when he was here, and Jeff and I kept asking him question after question, he's like, I'm going to start charging you guys half my rate. And he also did our OTC. He will be headed to pilot training in April of this year. hopefully, if the schedules don't change. And the thing that changed with my son as opposed to our homeschool journey with my daughter was I think I really did have a better sense of that purpose. And I had more confidence because we made choices that allowed us to educate him according to his desires, his passions, his interests, rather than being so locked into meeting arbitrary standards that were set by somebody else. And I just, and I just encourage you to really develop your sense of purpose for that reason. One of the accounts of Jesus' life that always just amazes me, and each Easter, when we visit this again, kind of brings me to tears, is when he washes the disciples' feet, mere hours from when he is going to be arrested, tortured, rejected, ridiculed, suffer in ways that I cannot fathom for something he didn't do. And in the midst of that, he gets down on his hands and knees and washes some dirty feet. And I really believe one of the reasons that he was able to do that is when I read John 13:1, and it tells us that he came from the Father and he was going back to the Father. He knew the work that he had been put here to do. He did it. His mission was soon to be finished. And in that confidence, he could think about somebody else. It really touches me. And I think that is what having a clear vision can do for us as well. So Nehemiah instills vision in the people. They do the work, they build the walls, they're completed in 52 days, which is incredible. And then they have a time when Ezra, the priest, brings out the book of the law of Moses and reads it to them. And this is when we're going to talk about being refreshed, because as Ezra is reading to the people and they are hearing the law, again, I'm assuming that they knew these laws, but they were hearing them again and in a new way. And they just were realizing how they had failed. They were in captivity because they had failed to follow God's laws, and their hearts were broken. And they were mourning. The verse says, "Do not be grieved, for the joy of the Lord is your strength." Well, they were grieved because they were faced with their failure. But Nehemiah said, "Not today. Not today. We're not going to sit in that today. We're going to celebrate. We are going to rejoice that God helped us complete this work." They were reading these laws during the Feast of Tabernacles, which I think shows us that God has realized as humans we need times to rest. So he put Sabbath in the 10 Commandments, and we need times to refresh. And he put in these feasts in the year of the Jewish calendar. There are many different feast times to celebrate. So the joy of the Lord can come through just celebrating, and again, small things. Be aware of the times when your child has had too much and they just need a break. And maybe that's a time you need to just go sit on the couch together and snuggle for a minute, read a book, listen to them. We know kids love to talk, and they can just tell stories all day long, and they make no sense, and their jokes aren't funny. But sometimes we just have to listen. And, that is a way to refresh our child. Proverbs 11:25 says, "One who refreshes others is themselves refreshed." And it's true. When we do that for kids, we refresh ourselves too. Be intentional to set some times in your schedule for rest and for fun. So sometime during the day, maybe you have a snack time when you just all get together and have a snack together. Or you have a time when you just all come away from the work for a few minutes and move. You do some exercise. GoNoodle.com has videos you can kind of move to. You just do a dance party. You go outside for a walk. You just get together, step away from the work for a few minutes, and just gets out some of that energy. And then on a weekly basis, can there be things that you're all looking forward to? Can you know that every Saturday morning you're going to do a pancake breakfast? Or Friday night you're going to do pizza and a movie? Or you're going to go for a family walk? Or a hike to somewhere that you haven't been before? Can you set up some kind of activities that really give everybody something to look forward to once a week? Maybe that's a Zoom meeting with grandparents or a friend as well. This is also a time when you can let your child pursue their interests and let their interests serve the rest of the family. If you have a child who really likes cooking, let them be the one who prepares that snack, or let them be the one who helps you with dinner. Really try to key into the interests and find opportunities for your child's interests to be to shine and to be used within the family. I think I mentioned, I don't know, one of the things that we did with our son more so than when we homeschooled our daughters was we really did what we would call delight directed learning in the homeschool community. You may be familiar with that term. And it is something that even in high school, you can put on a high school transcript. Colleges love to see ways that students have taken initiative to follow their own interests and create something or to serve others. It's often called a passion. It's a self-study, self-motivated, self-directed means of learning. And that's a way for children to key into their own interests and really grow through those. And by doing that, often kids can see what career field they want to go into. It can lead them to really kind of get a sense of what they would like to do long term. Giving students time is one of the benefits we have in the homeschool journey. We have the time and freedom to key into those interests. And you can connect them with the curriculum. So if you're doing remote learning and you don't have as much of that freedom, can you coordinate what they're doing through school with their interests? So say they've got a project, a paper they've got to write. Can they do that? Can they choose the topic? Can they write it on something they're really interested in? And then once they've written this paper on sharks, can you set up a Zoom meeting with the family so they can present it to your family members and they can also get some presentation skills practice? If you have a kid who really loves sports and they're studying math percentages, we'll use that to help them calculate statistics. If the school says your child has to read 20 minutes a day and they don't like to read and that seems to be a struggle, can they listen to Audible books? Is that acceptable? Can you help them find books that they're really interested in? If they really like snakes, then get some books from the library on snakes. And from personal opinion, that is a real sacrifice for me to sit and look at pictures of snakes with my child. But if that's what's going to encourage them to read, then you do it. Oh, that's so cool, Harriet. She read Helen Keller and then taught herself signing. And now at 14, she's,
Wow.
what is she doing at 14?
14, she is a proficient signer, and she wants to teach children signing.
That is amazing. That is exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you for sharing that. That's what allowing your kids to follow their passions can lead to, and it's so exciting to watch. And you also can create opportunities for them to serve others by pursuing their interests, much as Harriet has just shared with us. But it can also be something like, making cookies to take to a neighbor. If they have a writing project to do, can they write a letter and send to a family member? Do they want to create a website or maybe make a video sharing some music they've learned or teaching someone how to do something? If you have a child who really likes pirates, maybe they can learn how to tie knots and create a video showing people how to tie knots. I am not familiar with YouTube, how you upload videos or any of that, but that might be an option. Or maybe it's a video that they create and just send to their friend. There is a really interesting thing I learned about last year called the golden hour. This is something that many corporations such as Google incorporate into their work life. My son-in-law works for Google, so I verified this with him that is true. Allowing their workers to have a period of time, like take a couple hours a week to work on whatever they want to. It doesn't have to have anything to do with their work project. It can just be pursuing their own interests. And they can do that during work time because they know that encourages their employees to continue to learn. It's that lifelong love of learning that makes them better workers. This is also mentioned in the book, Imagine It Forward. So is that something you could do at home? Maybe for half an hour after lunch, everybody just goes off and reads, researches, watch a documentary on something that's interesting to them. But at some point, we all know we got to turn those screens off because it's just wearing our brains out. So I really encourage you to think about some non-screen activities to refresh your family. You know, we've talked about hikes, we've talked about going out. And one of my favorites, one of the things that we loved most in our family was family read-alouds. And it happened a couple of different ways. With our daughters, that's something my husband would do with them at bedtime because that was the time he had with them. With my son, it was something that we did during our school day. And I'll be honest, that was what got me moving. I could procrastinate school until noontime if I left my own devices. But I liked the books we were reading as much, sometimes I think more than my son. And so knowing, okay, we're going to start this morning with a half an hour of read aloud, family read aloud. That was a good motivator for me. I did want to share just a couple of the things that we read through the years that we really enjoyed. Youth with a Mission has this series called Heroes Now and Then, Christian Heroes Then and Now. I brought the book because I can never remember the title. Christian Heroes Then and Now. And they have two, some of them are missionary stories, some of them are historical figures. So this one, Gladys Aylward, if you don't know her story, I'd encourage you to read it. She is amazing. Are you familiar with her, Linda?
Yeah.
So she is a woman who went to China, and I love how in a time when many missionaries tried to make the people more like them, Gladys Aylward totally adopted their culture, their dress, their food, and she assimilated into their culture so she could share the gospel with them, and it was amazing. There's also a movie about her called The Inn of the Sixth Happiness, which is not totally accurate as movies aren't always, but it also is a good story. And then there's one on historical people or literature people, C.S. Lewis, George Washington, Harriet Tubman. There's so many in that series. Another fun series is called Childhood of Famous Americans. And this one is kind of fun because all of these people that they know as adults, like Paul Revere, George Washington, again, I think Harriet Tubman, they can see what their childhood was like. And, you know, that's relatable for a kid to see these other people were kids too. This is an oldie but a goodie. My kids laugh about this book. It's called The Value of Believing Yourself. It's the story of Louis Pasteur. The series, it's called A Value Tale. There are many books in this series about different people. It's got great illustrations. It's very readable for even young children. And it shares character ideas in a really powerful way. You know, at the end of the book, Louis Pasteur says, when I was working in my laboratory, I enjoyed the times when I believed in myself. In those days, I didn't always succeed. Even if I didn't, it always felt good to believe that I could. So these are fun. And they have books. There's a woman pilot during the 1920s that I cannot remember her name, but the story about her was fascinating. I never knew. If you want to read about women pilots, there's a book called Fly Girls. There was a whole bunch of women who really were instrumental in early aviation in this country. It's fascinating. So, finding joy in your homeschool journey is going to take intention. It's going to take prayer, obviously, but again, a reminder we so often need to just pray and seek God's strength and wisdom and guidance, in, like we had talked about, in specific prayers of time when we've set that aside, and then in the moment prayers as well. God's listening all the time. We've heard many times that joy and happiness are not the same thing. Happiness depends on circumstances, while joy is something you can choose. And so I hope by choosing that to remember how God has worked in your lives through your reflection, and then establishing a clear path forward, trusting in His provision and protection, and also renewing your vision by developing your why that's going to just provide that foundation, and then refreshing your homeschool days with intentional times of rest and fun, times to rejuvenate, and finding activities that re-energize. That by doing these things, you'll experience the joy that really can be found on the homeschool journey. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Amen.
Very good.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
You mentioned a book early on, The Lazy Something or Other by somebody named Hendrick.
Yes. Here, I was going to put The Lazy Genius Way. Let me see if I can get to the chat.
The Lazy Genius.
Lazy Genius Way by Kendra.
Oh, Kendra.
She also has a podcast called The Lazy Genius, which is one I enjoy listening to. It's a quick one, usually 15 to 20 minutes tops. And it's just lots of practical ideas for home and family.
Okay. And that book that you mentioned towards the end, Childhood Stories of Different Icons. I'm not sure what the title you mentioned. I think there was Paul Revere on the cover.
Yes.
What is the exact name of that series?
Childhood of Famous Americans.
Okay, Childhood.
If anybody is interested, I would be glad to create just a PDF of some of the read-alouds and books that we've enjoyed over the years, and I could either send that to you, Linda, and you could email it out to people if they're interested.
That'd be wonderful.
Yes, that would be great. That'd be a great help.
Yeah, so I will put that together and email that to you, Linda, because
Okay.
a lot of these, like this one, The Childhood of Famous Americans, I know this is in the library. I think it's something you can still buy. Christian Book Distributors has a lot of these types of books. Another one that we love in our family that we read every Christmas is The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. Have either of you heard of that?
Yes, I have.
I love that so much. It's so funny, and it has such a powerful message of the gospel at the same time.
Tell me the name of it again.
The Best Christmas Pageant Ever.
Oh, The Best. Okay.
You can also get it on Audible. We read that aloud almost every year until our kids just are like, enough. But the little ones, our grandkids, they like it.
Yeah.
It's also, it's another one that was made into a movie. So Loretta Swit from MASH plays the mother in it.
Okay.
So that's a fun Christmas movie to watch.
That's a great tip. We have some great insights and great tips, that's for sure. Harriet, do you have any other questions that you can think of?
Well, I don't really have any questions. I think this was wonderful. I mean, I spent a lot of time particularly before I homeschooled, and now just researching and finding out what I can do better and how I can relax, etc. But this was very good. It just gave me a lot of tips that I knew about, but I just couldn't really focus on. So this was excellent. The book list I would love to have.
Okay, sure.
I have several kids who just do not like to read. And so, I have a lot of audiobooks. And so, that's something that we have to do every day. And so, and another thing is writing. There's a couple of them that just do not want to write. And so I have to really, force that on them. So any
Yeah.
tips that you can have about writing, I really appreciate.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I know for my son, we were fighting that battle, and we ended up using a curriculum called the Institute for Excellence in Writing.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
And I think we transitioned to that around fourth grade. What I thought was really helpful for that was it's formulaic in a way, which was a good and a bad. But at that point, having that kind of template and formula that they follow helped my son to get his feet under him in writing. And he went on to do pretty well. So in high school, he did dual enrollment in college. And he actually got into a writing class that was full because he wrote the professor an email and said, hey, I really would like to take this. And he wrote out his reasons. And she's like, I think that you would fit in my writing class.
That's
Oh,
great.
wow.
So
I'll check that out, definitely.
yeah, I would recommend that. That one was good.
Could you tell me that again? Institute of Excellence?
Institute for Excellence in Writing. It's
Okay.
often just called IEW.
Oh, IEW.
And I do think that having a reason to write something, so writing a letter to a friend or a grandparent, or writing a story about a shark if they like sharks. Again, trying to find ways that that's interesting to them. But yeah, writing is just hard. It's daunting. I mean, I think even for so many adults, the thought of writing something seems big.
Yeah. Jane, here's another question for you. We've got many in our society who are single moms, and they are experiencing, I would think, a unique set of challenges. I mean, you mentioned doing things with your husband.
Yeah.
These single moms don't have that option. Anything that you would especially think it would be important for them to help them survive and thrive?
Yeah. I think, first and foremost, give yourself grace and really do just celebrate those little things. That instead of always looking at what you didn't get accomplished that day, look at what you did.
Mm.
And I know for me, when our daughters were younger, my husband was traveling a lot. It's not the same. And I'm not trying to say that's the same. I totally get that. But just having other people to help, being able to take my kids to go to Bible study and just get a little bit of a break there. I can, so many of those things we can't do right now. But can you find support? And I just encourage them to ask for help, because single moms are so often they have to do it all themselves. And I think they often get into that mindset of I can't ask for help. I shouldn't ask for help. But I really encourage you, find someone else who, now today you can safely do things with, however that's going to look for you.
That's great.
You can take turns watching each other's kids.
Right. Think outside the box.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Well, I should mention that this recording will be eventually up on our YouTube channel. So I can let you all know when that is ready to be viewed. But I wanted to thank you, Jane, for your preparation, for your wonderful insights coming from your experience. And I think you did a great job. So thank you.
Well, thank you for allowing me this opportunity. And I'm just so glad to be able to share.
Good. Well, Lord bless you on this day, one and all. And if you come to the retreat in a couple of weeks, we'll see you then.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, Jane. Good to see you again, Harriet.
Yeah, same here.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.